thank you to the people of the state of California, where they upheld the principles that were advanced, the great work of the senator and his colleagues through SB 1 that set aside of over $5 billion, consistent set aside of resources to improve our bridges and improve our infrastructure across the state of California. So we all recognize what we all experience and see, but I want folks in the state of California to know that this state is at a whole another level of investment over many, many years to improve the infrastructure, to improve the connectivity in the state, north and south regionally, and we're very, very proud of that collective effort. High-speed rail was mentioned, just briefly. $4.2 billion is being requested of the legislature to finish the job, to get that first phase done between three dynamic cities in the state of California, three cities that we should spend more time learning about and visiting and connecting to. And a big part of our broader strategy is to connect the Central Valley, Central Coast, Northern California, Southern California, the entire state of California. As we roar, these engines roar, California's strength is when we look to each other, support each other, and we advance our collective efforts together. And so this notion of the high-speed rail is about connecting those dots, and we continue to not only advance the cause between Bakersfield and Merced, but continue to finish the work, which is just months away in the vast majority of cases. All the environmental work will be completed in terms of the northern terminus and the central, or rather the Southern California terminus. Just in the next few months, a lot of the environmental review work will be specifically done down to Palmdale, parts of Burbank and LA, and of course the work up here, San Jose, down or up north to San Francisco. So progress is being made there, and I'll just remind you, there's an additional, and if I've lost you, it's because you're paying attention. If I haven't lost you, you've not paid attention. There's an additional, separate $50 billion of competitive grants that are out there that we're going to go after like a train running through the station. We're going to aggressively go after those $50 billion of federal monies under a competitive process to draw down more support for our regional connections north and south and our high-speed rail program. And to those of you that have followed the Build Back Better program, there's $10 billion specifically set aside for those efforts if indeed that bill becomes law in the state. So that's why we're here. Gratitude, Madam Mayor, thank you for all your leadership, and thank you for the acknowledgement of Santa Clara being quite familiar to me. So many of my great memories established here, and of course, Bob, you and I both know how extraordinary the anchor institution here in Santa Clara is, Santa Clara University, and all the extraordinary talent they convey. May not be the two of us, but many others every single day, every year rather, in this region. So with that, we're here to happy to answer any question on this topic, and I imagine some other subjects that may be top of mind today as well.
Hi, Governor. This is Eliyahu Kamisher from the Mercury News. About high-speed rail funding, your budget doubles down.
Hold on 1 sec. They're going to turn up the mic. I don't know if someone's just purposely in there turning that engine on. You're almost, you have to just wonder, but anyway.
Can you hear me?
There you go. That's better. Thank you.
This is Eliyahu Kamisher from the Mercury News. Your budget doubles down on the high-speed rail funding that was left out of your previous, the previous final budget. What do you think is different this time, and how are you going to be able to push that through?
Well, we're going to get it done. I mean, God's delays are not God's denials. We're going to drive it. Otherwise, you have an erector set with pieces that aren't even complete. Whose interest is that? No one's. Let's get the job done. Let's finish the Central Valley component. Let's continue the work north and south. Let's provide more resources, as this budget does, for regional projects that will connect to the anchor project in the Central Valley. Let's fulfill the vision, particularly here, Central Valley to Silicon Valley, which I think is one of the most exciting components of that high-speed rail project, the jobs, housing components, the issues around economic development and workforce development. Those opportunities present themselves anew once we get that first phase done and we continue to advance the subsequent phases in parallel. And so that's the vision, that's the goal. But I don't want to run the 90-yard dash on it. And so the voters set aside the money for this purpose, want to get those dollars out under Prop 1A and finish that job, do it in a thoughtful and judicious way. I've only been here 3 years, can't make up for that previous decade, but we can be accountable to finishing that phase and continuing the work to prepare for these subsequent phases. Yeah, I will have that information will be out very shortly and over the course of the next few hours. But that decision's been made, and we will be providing. We'll be putting out that statement in detail, the detailed statement in the next later this afternoon. Thank you.
Governor, this is Kit Doe with KPIX5. Two-part question. We've seen a lot of these large infrastructure projects from the Bay Bridge to the Central Subway Station in San Francisco go long and go over budget.
Some golden oldies there. Very
yeah, how much confidence should the public have that this is not going to continue with high-speed rail? And also, secondly, do you think we'll see high-speed rail in your lifetime?
Well, we're seeing it. I see it I was down on the 5 yesterday, driving north-south, went to beautiful town, Lamont, yesterday, in the Central Valley. Great history there with farm workers. And you see the progress every time I drive in the valley of the high-speed rail. So yes, the answer is yes, I expect to see that. We're going to get it done. For said Bakersfield, we're going to continue to fight for more regional and dollars to build out the infrastructure so we can connect the dots into the future, and we'll continue to work with our federal partners. But the reality is the hand that was dealt when I got here 3 years ago is a little bit different than the original vision in terms of the resources that remain and the capacity to deliver on the original vision with those now more limited resources. So we're trying to get things done, move things forward in a systemic way, an appropriate way, and provide value for those dollars. And that's what we're charged to do. And that's what our focus is and will continue to be.
Hi, good morning, Governor. Margie Schaefer with KCBS. I've just got a couple COVID questions. The first, regarding schools, you sent rapid tests to schools. Teachers are calling for more regular testing programs.
And forgive me,
Okay.
There we
They
go.
revved. They revved.
Okay.
Okay.
You could offer that question. Forgive us.
So you sent the rapid test to schools. Teachers are calling for more regular testing. Are you considering providing regular tests? Would that be a good tool to keep?
Well, I want to
schools
remind
open?
everybody in fact, as of this morning, 13 million tests have arrived, over-the-counter tests, just in the last month to our public schools. It's not an indictment. It's not a critique. It's just a point of comparative contrast. The Biden administration is talking about 10 million tests for the country. At the end of the month, we provided 13 million tests just in the state in the last month. We want to continue to provide more support, more testing for our schools. That said, and this is important to note, that's additive to the baseline testing that's been established. We have 4,400 schools that are active in our baseline testing program. And we have partnerships, including the 60,000 to 80,000 tests that come out of one of our state-owned labs, Valencia Labs in Southern California, with many of the school districts across the state. And we want to continue those partnerships, continue to advance that baseline testing in our public schools. We've added on top of that these over-the-counter tests, and we'll continue to do everything in our power to provide more tests as we compete with the federal government for access to those tests. The good news, we punch above our weight. It's the state of California, fifth largest economy in the world, and that's why we continue not only to provide on a daily and weekly basis more tests, but also more masks. And this is something I want to highlight. California has now provided 14.5 million N95 masks to our public schools just in the last few weeks. Over 1 billion units of PPE have been provided to schools and community institutions from local health jurisdictions over the course of the last year or so. But specifically 14.5 million in the last few weeks. That said, we have more work to do in that space. There are many districts that have yet to receive those masks that they have specifically ordered, but we have a brand new website up over the Office of Emergency Service, a portal where they can get those N95s in particular at no costs. I'm really proud of that. Again, we're uniquely positioned to be able to provide those supports. So it's testing, but that's not it. It's masking, it's testing, it's all the protocols that we have established over the course last year and a half, the $5.3 billion that we put up specifically for improving infrastructure and ventilation. That was part of the early actions we took with the senator and others over the course last year. All those dollars being at work to keep our kids, most importantly, keep them safely in person in school, and that continues to be our top priority, including the reason why we did an executive order 2 days ago to provide more flexibility, to provide more support for substitute teachers, and to provide more support for schools that need more staffing so we can get through the next few weeks, which we all acknowledge will be a challenging few weeks, so we can get to the other side and we will have a successful 180-day in-person instruction school year, which is the intention we all have for our kids in every part of this state.
Related to that, should schools have a backup plan to go back to distance learning? I mean, instead of just repeating?
I'm sorry. This was done because I apparently didn't say thank you to a member of my staff or something. I'm going to find out what happened. People watching at home have no idea, but this is surround sound. Forgive me, I can't hear you.
Yeah, okay. Should schools have a backup plan to go back to distance learning instead of just repeating what they say, or we're going to stay open no matter what? I mean, what if, as you mentioned, there aren't enough teachers to run the joint?
I want kids in school. We want them safely in person instruction, and the overwhelming majority of the schools are working through this. And let me just acknowledge, it's not easy. I want to thank the superintendents, school leaders. I want to thank the line staff, the bus drivers. I want to thank the cafeteria workers. I want to thank the folks that are getting kids in Caltran behind me to school every day. It takes, well, I don't want to say a village, but it takes all of us. And there's just nothing more important than the social emotional components of being in person in school. We've extended, this budget we put out, $102 billion, record, unprecedented, record-breaking budget, state of California, to reimagine the public education system. Created a brand new grade. It's not K through 12 anymore. I even have to disabuse myself. I talk about K through, it's pre-K 12. We put a brand new grade, fully funding that the next couple of years. We are providing supports we only have dreamt of. I mean, there have been initiatives, there's been governors over the last, 2 decades have been talking about after school for all and summer school. We're doing it. We're delivering on that, extending the school days, extending the school years. We're going to get that instruction in. We'll work through this. I know it's trying and challenging, and I have great respect and empathy for those every day are working through this very difficult period. And it's not just our schools. It's, as you know well, it's our hospitals, our healthcare system writ large. This is a challenging time. The next few weeks will be challenging, but we can get through this. We will get through it. And I want to do it in a way that does justice to the principles and the importance, the imperative of keeping our kids safe and keeping them safely in school.
Okay, 11 prison staff have died in 2020, 38 in 2021. You're mandating vaccines for healthcare workers, teachers. Why not prison staff?
Well, we have similar state rules for all state workers that require vaccine and/or testing. Our corrections officers are tested twice a week. Many state employees just once. We have vaccine rates north of 70% for that staff and 100% requirement for healthcare staff at CDCR. And while we've seen number of people positive substantially lower within the system, a little over 3,000 as of today, roughly a population of 100,000, a smaller percentage than community spread at CDCR. It's the top priority to focus on the mitigation of that spread. That's why we've modified movement within the system and intake. And we continue to require, as you know well, N95 masking for all of our CDCR staff that are in those settings. Accordingly, we continue to do what best we can to mitigate the more extreme impacts of the Omicron variant. And as a consequence, while it's correct, you noted some of the more extreme and unfortunate effects of this pandemic on our prison population in the past, we are not seeing that kind of acuity of hospitalizations today with the patient population within the prisons that have been impacted by Omicron.
Can I ask one more question?
Yeah.
What do you say to people that will see this and be critical that this money is being spent towards transportation when we have these urgent, teacher shortages, businesses failing, and is it maybe frustrating for you to have this big pot of money earmarked that you can't use for these crises that we're facing right now?
Well, the good news is I want to disabuse people of that. Quite the contrary, in fact. $2.9 billion for teacher retention, $2.9 billion teacher retention, professional development, unprecedented investments in public education. Yesterday, we announced a $2.7 billion plan to deal with the immediate crisis around COVID, $1.4 billion early action that we're looking forward to presenting the senator and his colleagues for more staff, more masks, more tests, more boosters. So we're doing that and. So to the extent they're critics, I think what's critical for them is to learn more about what's in the budget, including the fact that we have one of the largest surpluses in our state's history. Why is that? Because of the incredible economic output in this state. This economy has grown faster in the last 5 years than any other Western democracy. Let me be more specific. No other Western democracy, the United States included, has outperformed California in economic growth in the last 5 years. We've outperformed Florida and Texas since the pandemic, as a just interesting aside. We also have outperformed the number of people that have died, a substantially lower percentage, 50% higher per capita death rate in Florida than the state of California, as an example, as our economic output has outperformed. Both go hand in hand. And so I'm really proud of that. More business startups in the state's history, and our budget includes hundreds of millions. In fact, no, billions and billions, because there's a $5.5 billion proposal for R&D tax credits and incentives for business. So I'm really pleased that we were able to do all of those things and invest in our growth engines, and that's our infrastructure, which is really part of the formula for the success of any democracy, including the state of California.
Got a question here.
You may not get the answer you want because it may be consistent with the one I provided yesterday and the day before.
So CPUC is meeting today. There's a big rally outside that meeting. How are you going to deal with competing interests? You've got rooftop solar folks and the green jobs that they provide. Big utilities don't want to compensate homeowners for their rooftop solar. You've got social justice groups who say that compensating homeowners is just another giveaway for the wealthy.
Yeah, it's complicated. I appreciate you framed it appropriately so. And as I said on Monday during the budget, as I said yesterday at 2 stops, one in San Diego and one in Los Angeles, we look forward to working through those issues and see where we can land, and there'll be more to say on this very, very shortly. Appreciate it. Thank you all.